Tonight, I invite you to walk with me on a path where time softens, where thoughts become still, and where ancient wisdom gently opens the gates to peace. For the next 3 hours, you won't need to try or strive or understand with your mind. You are simply here to listen, to rest, and perhaps to remember something you've always known deep within your heart. In this sacred space, I will guide you through timeless Zen stories passed down through generations, each one a lantern lighting the way home to yourself. You may not need to remember the details. Let the stories flow over you like warm water. Let them soften your body, open your heart, and quiet your restless mind. Breathe in gently now and exhale slowly. Allow yourself to be here. You are safe. You are enough. You are home. Let us begin where all journeys begin, not with answers, but with awareness. With a simple truth about how often we fill the world with meanings that were never really there. Our first story invites us to let go of assumptions and discover what it means to truly see. Story 1. The Empty Boat. As you lie back and settle in, allow your breath to slow, your muscles to soften, and your thoughts to begin to quiet. Let the outside world fade for now. There's nowhere else you need to be. Let me tell you a story. It begins on a still river at dusk, where the sky is painted with golden light, and the water moves in silent harmony. There was once a man who loved the solitude of rowing his boat along this peaceful river. Every evening, as the sun lowered beyond the hills and the day grew still, he would paddle gently, breathing in the quiet and watching the world reflect on the water's surface. One evening, as he drifted through the golden mist, he saw another boat approaching from the distance, heading straight toward him. He called out politely, "Careful, please, you're coming right at me." But the boat didn't change course. He called louder, this time more firm, "Hey, watch where you're going." Still, the boat kept coming silent and unresponsive until it struck his boat with a jarring thud. The man jumped to his feet, ready to unleash his anger on the person inside. But when he looked closer, he saw that the boat was empty. There was no one to blame, no careless boater, no rude stranger, just an empty vessel drifting with the current. And in that instant, his anger disappeared. Just like that. Gone. As if it had never been real. He sat down quietly, humbled, realizing the storm he had felt was one he had created entirely within himself. Nothing had changed, except his story about what was happening. The boat had still collided with his, but once he knew there was no intention behind it, there was no longer anything to fight against. No insult, no disrespect, no other to be angry with. Only a moment and a choice. The Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." How often do we find ourselves reacting to empty boats? Situations where no harm was intended, yet we fill them with blame, resentment, and meaning that may not exist. at all. Someone doesn't return a message. Someone cuts us off in traffic. A colleague seems distant. A friend cancels plans. And instantly our minds begin weaving stories. They're disrespecting me. They don't care. I'm being ignored. But what if, like the boat, these moments were empty, not personal, not deliberate, just drifting events in the current of life? Zen Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from how our ego interprets it. The ego seeks a narrative, a reason, a villain, a way to protect itself. When we are identified with this ego, we live as if we are the center of the universe, and every action around us is a reflection of our worth. But the truth is, the world is not about us, and that can be incredibly freeing. Breathe with that for a moment. Inhale softly, exhale completely. Let your chest rise and fall like the rhythm of the river. Now bring to mind a moment from your day or your past when you felt hurt or offended. What if that boat was empty too? What if the person who forgot you was simply lost in their own pain? What if the one who ignored you was carrying an invisible burden? What if the one who seemed cold was silently drowning? It doesn't mean we excuse everything, but it means we don't have to carry every boat with us. In Zen practice, we learn to recognize these moments through mindfulness, the ability to pause, to observe, and to choose a new response. The next time anger begins to rise within you, tightening your chest, quickening your breath, narrowing your vision, remember the empty boat. Return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to now. The 13th century Zen master Dogen said, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And in forgetting the self, we see more clearly. We stop writing stories that do not serve us. We stop turning drifting boats into battles. We become the river. So tonight, if you find yourself reviewing old arguments, rehearsing future conversations, or clinging to a story of unfairness, ask yourself, is this an empty boat? If it is, let it pass, let it drift by, and return to the stillness that is always here. Because beneath the mind's stories, there is only this breath, this gentle moment, this peaceful now. And as the ripples of that teaching settle in your heart, let us continue drifting down the river of wisdom toward another story, a tale of danger, fear, and an unexpected taste of joy. This next lesson awaits you on a narrow mountain path where a monk runs from a tiger and finds salvation not in escape, but in a single perfect strawberry. Let's continue. Story 2. The Monk and the Tiger. And so, we move from the still river to the winding path of a quiet mountain forest. The air is crisp here. The trees rise like ancient sentinels. The world feels untouched, timeless. Here we meet a monk. He lives in a small monastery hidden among the trees, where silence is his truest companion, and the teachings of the Buddha echo softly through each breath of wind. Each morning, he walks the forest path in meditation, each step a practice, each breath a prayer. He carries no worries, no goals, only presence. But one day, something changes. A deep, guttural roar rips through the forest. The birds fall silent. The leaves tremble. And the monk turns to find a tiger charging toward him. Its eyes are fixed. Its body pure muscle and purpose. There's no time to think. He runs. His bare feet fly across the uneven path. His robes whip behind him like a banner of panic. The tiger gains ground, closer with every breath. Desperate, he spots a vine hanging from the edge of a cliff and leaps, grabbing hold. He dangles over the edge, high above the jagged rocks below, heart racing, breath shattered. And then he looks down. Another tiger waits at the bottom, pacing, watching, hungry. Above him a tiger, below him a tiger. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, just him and the vine, suspended between fear and fear. But then something catches his eye. Just within reach, growing from the side of the cliff, is a tiny plant, a wild strawberry, ripe, red, perfect. The monk reaches with one hand, plucks the strawberry, and places it gently in his mouth. And he smiles. The sweetness floods his senses. For that one moment, the tigers disappear. There is no chase, no fear, no past, no future, only the flavor, only now. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. How often are we like this monk, trapped between the tigers of regret and anxiety? The tiger above, the mistakes, losses, and moments we wish we could change. The tiger below, the worries, deadlines, and unknowns that gnaw at our peace. And in between, a single, fleeting, beautiful moment. The strawberry we often miss. Tonight, take a breath. Feel the air enter your lungs. Feel your body held by the bed beneath you. This is your strawberry. This moment, right now, is the only one that truly exists. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Only this. And within this moment, there is joy, if you're willing to notice it. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. But why is it so difficult? Because our minds have been trained to chase, to analyze, to protect us from what might happen, or punish us for what already happened. We live between tigers. But the miracle of Zen is not in slaying them. It's in realizing they cannot touch us. Here. When we return fully to this breath, this taste, this sound, we return to life itself. Think now of the small strawberries you may have overlooked today, the way sunlight touched your window, the warmth of a cup in your hands, a quiet moment of laughter, a single breath you didn't notice but took anyway. These are not small things. They are everything. Zen practice calls us to what the Japanese name ichigo ichi, one time, one meeting. Each moment is unique, unrepeatable, sacred. When we truly understand this, we stop waiting for better moments to arrive. We stop postponing our presence. And we begin to live, not later, but now. So tonight, if your mind wanders to something you regret or something you fear, pause and ask gently, where is the strawberry in this moment? What can I savor right here? Maybe it's the rhythm of your breathing, the comfort of the blanket against your skin, the gift of stillness in this quiet space. The tigers may still be there, but they are not this bite. They are not this now. The Buddha said, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. And that path is walked one bite at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. As the monk closed his eyes and smiled into the taste of that strawberry, he discovered a truth far greater than escape. And now, as you rest more deeply in your own breath, let us continue together toward another story. This one takes us into the quiet woods once more. But here, the lesson is not about presence. It's about pain and the unnecessary arrows we fire at ourselves. Let us continue with the story of the two arrows. Story 3. The two arrows. The monk tasted the sweetness of life even in the shadow of fear. And perhaps that is one of the most radical freedoms we can ever know. But not all suffering comes from tigers. Some pain arrives quietly, unexpected, uninvited. A loss, a failure, a heartbreak, a sharp moment that pierces deep. This pain, this first wound, is often beyond our control. It comes from life simply unfolding. But there is another kind of pain, one that we do have control over. And yet it is the one we most often choose. Let me explain. Imagine someone walking peacefully through a forest, when suddenly an arrow strikes them. It hurts, and they cry out. That pain, the first arrow, is real. It's raw. It represents the inevitable difficulties of being human. But then, a second arrow follows. This one is not from the outside. It's crafted by the mind. It's the story. Why me? This always happens. I'll never be okay. The second arrow turns pain into suffering. And unlike the first, it's one we fire at ourselves. Take a breath here. Ask yourself gently, how many second arrows have I lived through? The illness that arrived uninvited, that was the first arrow. But the shame, the fear, the anger, that was the second. the breakup, the ending, that's the first. But the endless spiral of self-blame, doubt, and worthlessness, that's the one we add. We hurt, and then we hurt again. Not because life insists, but because our minds don't know how to stop. It's human. Deeply so. We think, if I can make sense of the pain, I can control it. If I blame myself enough, maybe it won't happen again. If I resist it, maybe it will go away. But none of these beliefs free us. They only tighten the knot. There is a difference between pain and suffering, between what happens to us and how we relate to it. And in that space lies our freedom. Imagine a moment from your life that hurt, a real wound. Now imagine it without the internal storm that followed. No guilt, no blame, no story, just the truth of it. The raw moment. The body's response. That is the first arrow. Everything else is optional. Through mindfulness, we begin to notice these patterns. We hear the inner voice that says, "This is terrible. I'm a failure. It's all my fault." And instead of following it, we pause. We breathe. We remember. This is a second arrow. And I can choose to lower the bow. The Buddha taught pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. At first it sounds cold, but it is in truth an invitation to healing. You are not weak for feeling pain. You are human. But you are also not powerless. Every moment you can choose a softer path. So tonight, if something hurts physically or emotionally, don't turn away. Feel it gently. Breathe with it. But watch your thoughts closely. Are you adding more pain than necessary? Are you imagining futures that haven't arrived? Punishing yourself for things already past? Notice those thoughts. Name them kindly. Thinking, judging, fearing, and then return to breath, to body, to now. There is no shame in being struck by the first arrow. It means you're alive, you're open, you care. But may you remember that the second arrow is not your destiny. You can choose something else, a hand on your heart, a breath that says, "This too will pass," a voice that whispers, "It's okay to feel." One day you'll look back at these moments of pain and not feel bitterness, but compassion, not because it didn't hurt, but because you survived with kindness. You'll see how many times you sat in your own darkness and still managed to protect your light. You'll see how every breath of awareness was a thread, pulling you gently back to peace. So, if tonight you feel the sting of something, an old memory, a lingering ache, a sadness you can't quite name, sit with it, but sit like a friend, not with the cold hands of judgment, but with the warm presence of love. Because maybe the greatest act of courage is not pretending we don't feel pain, but learning how to meet it without adding more As the arrow is released and your breath returns, you may feel lighter, emptier, not from loss, but from letting go. And as we journey further together, we step now into the home of grief, a place we all know. It is the space where love once lived and where loss has left its mark. Let us continue. Story 4. The Mustard Seed. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It is the echo of love. To grieve is to have loved deeply. And to have loved is to have lived fully. And yet, when we lose something or someone so close to our hearts, it can feel as if we are the only ones carrying that weight, as if the world has forgotten our sorrow, as if the pain is ours alone. But listen closely, and you will find a truth more gentle than time itself. You are not alone in your grief. There was once a woman consumed by sorrow. She had lost her child, her only child, and the world seemed to vanish beneath her. She wandered from house to house, cradling the lifeless body in her arms, begging anyone who would listen, "Please, someone must know how to bring him back. There must be a way." Every door she knocked upon brought the same answer, "I'm sorry, but death visits all of us." Still, she refused to believe. Her grief had made her blind to the world's impermanence, until finally someone pointed her toward a great teacher, known for his compassion and wisdom. She fell to her knees and laid the child before him, her voice broken. "Master, please, I beg you, bring him back to me." The teacher looked into her eyes, not with pity but with presence, and he said, "I can help. But first you must bring me a single mustard seed. It must come from a house that has never known death." The woman rose at once, hope burning in her chest. She went to the first home. "Have you known death here?" "Yes," they said. "Our grandfather passed last year." She tried another. "Yes, we lost a sister." Another, and another, and another. Each house had known death. Each family had grieved. As the sun began to set, the woman stopped searching. She returned to the teacher, not with a mustard seed, but with something far more precious: understanding. Her pain had not disappeared, but it had become shared, not diminished, but no longer isolating. She bowed deeply and said, "I see now. I am not alone in my suffering. Death comes to all, but love remains." The Buddha once taught, "Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that and all will be well." These words are not cold, they are kind. They do not ask us to stop loving, but to stop clinging. Why do we resist loss so fiercely? Because we believe we shouldn't have to say goodbye. We want permanence in a world that only offers change. We hold on because letting go feels like forgetting. But letting go is not forgetting. It is remembering differently. Remembering with gratitude, not with desperation. Loss is not a punishment. It is a part of this rhythm, this cycle we all share, birth and death, meeting and parting, holding and releasing. Nothing lasts forever. But that does not mean it was not worth loving. Tonight, if you are holding grief, let it rest beside you. You don't have to force it away. You don't need to rush healing. But you also don't have to carry it alone. Remember that every person you meet has grieved. Every eye that meets yours has wept. Every hand you hold has let go of something too soon. You are not broken for hurting. You are human for feeling. So as you breathe here soft and steady, bring to mind someone or something you've lost. A name, a face, a season of life. Hold it gently, not with desperate fingers, but with open palms. Whisper, "Thank you for being. I release you now, and I carry your love forward." Zen does not ask us to forget. It invites us to remember with awareness, to transform grief into presence, to let the pain carve deeper space for compassion. The woman who lost her child did not return home with him in her arms. She returned with the world in her heart. She saw herself not as a tragic exception, but as a thread in the fabric of all living things. She buried her child, not in despair, but with dignity, not in isolation, but in unity. And perhaps for the first time, she truly rested. The Buddha taught, in the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. These are the seeds of wisdom, planted not in certainty, but in surrender. So tonight, as you lie here between silence and sleep, let what was be what it was. Let what left leave gently. And let your heart soften, not to forget, but to make room for all that is still to come. And as the night deepens and your breath slows further still, we now come to a place of stillness where judgment dissolves and change loses its sharp edges. What if not everything needs to be labeled? What if joy and sorrow are not opposites, but partners? Let us keep walking together. Story 5. The Farmer and the Horse. The deeper we go, the more we begin to see that life cannot be sorted neatly into boxes. Good, bad, fortunate, unfortunate. We try so hard to organize our lives into meaning, to label each moment, to categorize every event as either blessing or burden. But life has its own rhythm, wider, wiser, more mysterious than our limited perspective allows. What seems like a curse today may reveal itself as a blessing tomorrow. And what once felt like a miracle may someday dissolve quietly into sorrow. There was once a man who lived in a small village. He owned only one horse, which he cherished. It helped him work the fields and carry him to town. One morning the horse ran away. The neighbors came rushing in, their voices full of sympathy. "What terrible luck! Your only horse is gone. How will you manage now?" The man simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it a group of wild horses from the mountains. Now he had many. The neighbors returned, excited this time. "Oh, what great fortune! Look how life has rewarded you." Again the man said, "Maybe." Soon after, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses, but was thrown violently to the ground and broke his leg. The villagers cried, "Oh no, such bad luck! Now your son cannot help you during the harvest." Again the man said, "Maybe." Weeks later, war broke out. Soldiers came to the village to recruit all able-bodied young men. But the farmer's son, with his broken leg, was left behind. Once again the neighbors came, their faces full of awe. "You are so fortunate. Your son is safe." And once again he answered, "Maybe." The Buddha taught, nothing is permanent, everything is subject to change. Being is always becoming. This wisdom asks us to hold our experiences not with tight fists, but with open hands, because we never really see the whole picture. How often have you rushed to judge something, only to later realize how much more there was to the story? The job you didn't get that led to a deeper calling. The relationship that ended that taught you how to love yourself. The failure that humbled you and showed you what truly matters. At first it looked like loss, but with time it revealed its hidden gift. We don't need to pretend that hardship feels good, or that we should welcome suffering with a smile. But we can practice softening the labels we place upon life. We can pause before declaring, "This is good, this is bad, this shouldn't have happened," because truth lives beyond judgment. And peace begins where certainty ends. Breathe with that for a moment. What in your life have you labeled too quickly? What experience are you still calling a curse before the story has finished unfolding? Can you hold it now with the farmer's wisdom? Can you gently whisper to yourself, "Maybe"? This is not passivity. This is presence. It's not indifference. It's equanimity. A quiet trust in the river of life, knowing it flows in ways we do not always understand, but can still surrender to. Zen doesn't teach us to numb ourselves or stop caring. It teaches us to care without clinging, to engage without demanding, to live without needing constant reassurance. There is a freedom in letting go of the need to label every outcome, to simply live and let life reveal itself in time. Because what if what you are going through now, what feels like a dead end, is actually a doorway? What if the ground beneath your feet is not collapsing, but shifting to reveal a new path? And what if peace is not found in understanding every twist of the story, but in trusting that each chapter has its purpose. The wind changes, the seasons turn, and people come and go, circumstances rise and fall. But through it all, you remain, not untouched, but unbroken, not invulnerable, but steady, like a tree that sways and still stands, like a candle that flickers but does not go out. Tonight, as you lie here, reflect on the stories you're telling about your life. Which ones feel finished when they are still unfolding? Which ones are asking you to stop labeling and start listening? Which moments deserve your patience instead of your judgment? Perhaps the greatest wisdom is not in having answers by name, but in being willing to say, I don't know yet, and that's okay. And so we rest in that mystery, not afraid, but open, not demanding, but curious. We whisper softly to life, show me what you are. I am here. And now, with the winds of judgment calmed, we arrive at a new space, one not defined by control or expectation, but by the power of inner stillness. For the truest strength does not rise through resistance, but through the quiet mastery of our own hearts. Let us continue. Story 6. The Buddha and the Insulter. There is a kind of power that makes no noise. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't react. It doesn't rise when provoked. It simply remains. This power is not in the clenched fist, nor the raised voice, nor the sharp response. It is in the stillness that listens, in the silence that does not defend, in the heart that stays open, even in the face of attack. Once a teacher sat beneath a tree, surrounded by his students, offering quiet wisdom. As he spoke, a man approached, his eyes filled with rage. He hurled insults, loud, cutting, meant to humiliate. "You're a fraud," he shouted. "You sit here pretending to be enlightened, but you're nothing. You're no better than anyone else." But the teacher remained still. He did not flinch. He did not argue. The man grew louder, more furious. "Say something, defend yourself. Are you afraid of the truth?" Still, the teacher stayed silent. Until, at last, he looked up and asked calmly, "If someone offers you a gift, and you choose not to accept it, who does it belong to?" The man, confused, replied, "Well, I suppose it still belongs to the one who offered it." The teacher nodded. "Then the same is true of your anger. I do not accept it, and so it is still yours." The Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. How many coals have we held in our hands? How often have we accepted the poison someone handed us and called it truth? We cannot control what others do, but we can choose what we pick up and what we put down. Breathe here, feel into your body, notice where you carry tension. The jaw, the shoulders, the chest. These places are often where our unspoken battles live. And yet, we do not have to fight. We can witness. We can breathe. We can release. Anger often disguises itself as strength. It feels powerful, righteous, necessary. But true strength is not reactivity. It is restraint with clarity. It is spaciousness. It is peace that cannot be disturbed. When we choose not to accept the insult, when we choose not to mirror the aggression, we reclaim our freedom. Because in that moment, we are no longer puppets of emotion. We become the witness, the calm eye in the center of the storm. This is not weakness. This is mastery. The strength to choose presence over provocation, to choose understanding over ego. Not because we're passive, but because we are awake. Now bring to mind someone whose words or actions have stirred your anger. A moment, recent or old, that still echoes inside you. Feel what rises, and then gently ask yourself, is this something I want to carry any longer? You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You don't have to excuse it, but you also don't have to hold it anymore. Let it fall like a stone from your hand, like an old coat that no longer fits. You are not obligated to carry what was never truly yours. Zen invites us to step out of the endless cycles of reactivity, not by suppressing emotion, but by watching it with kindness, not by pretending to be above it all, but by choosing again and again to return to stillness. This stillness is not empty. It is full. It is alive. It listens. It sees clearly, and it responds from love, not from pain. The man who insulted the teacher left with his own anger intact. It had no power because it found no host. It echoed and then dissolved like thunder without rain. The teacher did not win. He simply did not lose himself. And sometimes, that is the greater triumph. You too have that choice. To be the one who returns to center. To be the one who does not pass pain forward. To be the one who plants stillness where others sow chaos. Tonight, as you settle deeper into the quiet of this moment, ask yourself, what have I accepted that was never mine? Whose words still live inside me? Whose energy have I absorbed? And with each breath, allow something to release. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe a resentment. Maybe the need to be right. Let it go. Let it fall back to the earth. Let your inner space be yours again. The Buddha said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the eternal law. To love is not always to embrace. Sometimes it is to detach with clarity, to hold space for healing even when we walk away. So tonight, be still. Let your silence speak louder than reaction. Let your peace be the boundary. And in that space, Xia, you may feel something new emerging. Not anger, not fear, but freedom. Now, as we move gently forward, we enter another layer of letting go. Not the anger of the moment, but the fear of loss. What happens when we hold something precious, knowing that one day it will break? Can we still love it fully? Let us continue. Story 7: The Monk and the Teacup. There is a quiet beauty in the simple things we hold each day. A worn stone, a falling leaf, a warm cup of tea. But how do we love something, knowing it will not last? There was once a monk, serene and wise, who lived a life of deep contemplation in the mountains. He was known for his clarity, for the calm that seemed to follow him like a gentle breeze. Each afternoon he would sit with his students and share tea. And one day, as they gathered around him in the stillness of the temple courtyard, he lifted a small clay cup in his hand. He gazed at it silently. It was simple, earth-colored, handmade, delicate. And then he smiled and said softly, "This teacup is already broken." The students were confused. One of them asked, "Master, but the cup is whole. It's not broken." The monk nodded, his smile deepening. "Yes," he said, "but in my heart, I already accept its end. One day it will fall, or chip, or crack with age. It may break tomorrow or in 50 years. But I know that it is temporary. So I drink from it and love it as if it were already gone." There is a wisdom in this. When we truly understand that nothing lasts forever, we begin to love more honestly, not with the grasping of fear, but with the softness of presence. So often our love is laced with anxiety. We want to preserve, to hold, to protect what we cherish. We cling to people, to moments, to the illusion of permanence. And when the inevitable change comes, we suffer, not because something ended, but because we believed it never would. But when we hold something with the awareness that it is already broken, we treasure it more. We notice the light catching the rim of the cup, the warmth of the tea in our palms, the shape of each moment shared. We stop rushing. We stop demanding. We begin to live right here. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. To accept impermanence is not to become cold. It is to become clear. It doesn't mean we stop loving. It means we love with open hands. We hold the moment fully, knowing we cannot keep it. And somehow that makes it even more precious. Look at your own life. What are the teacups you're afraid to lose? A relationship, a home, your health, your youth, even your own body. Can you love these things with the understanding that they are already changing? Can you soften your grasp, not to lose them faster, but to feel them deeper? There is a paradox here. When we let go of clinging, we feel more connected. When we release control, we receive more beauty. When we stop trying to protect everything we begin to truly appreciate anything. Tonight, as you rest, picture yourself holding a small, beautiful teacup. Let it represent something dear to you. And now, without fear, acknowledge, this too is already broken, not in despair, but in truth. Now drink from it, feel its warmth, treasure it, not because it will last forever, but because it won't. Zen does not teach detachment from love. It teaches love without fear. Love that is fully present. Love that is free from needing guarantees. Like the monk who smiles at the fragile cup and loves it completely. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them. This is the Zen way, not seeking perfection, but embracing imperfection. Not avoiding loss, but seeing its beauty. The crack is part of the story. The break is part of the love. So tonight, take this with you. Everything you love will change. Everyone you cherish is temporary. And that is not a reason to despair. It is a reason to bow in gratitude, to hold more gently, to live more fully. As the monk once said, because I know the cup is already broken, I can enjoy it all the more. May we live like that, with appreciation, not possession, with presence, not fear, with reverence for what is, even as it fades. And now with that cup gently set down, we journey onward toward another offering, not of clay, but of compassion. A reminder that the true value of giving is not in the object, but in the heart from which it flows. Let us continue. Story 8. The Buddha and the Robe. Generosity is often misunderstood. We think of giving as sacrifice, as a loss, as letting go of something we wish we could keep. But true giving, pure giving, comes not from scarcity, but from stillness, from knowing what is truly needed and what we no longer need to hold. Long ago, during his travels through the villages of India, the Buddha stopped to rest in a small town. As always, he came with nothing but his robe, his alms bowl, and the quiet glow of presence. Word of his arrival spread quickly, and a wealthy merchant, curious and moved, decided he must see the Buddha in person. When he did, something stirred within him. The Buddha's calmness, his gentle gaze, his peace. It was unlike anything the merchant had ever known. He wanted to show his respect, his admiration. So he returned to his home and brought the most beautiful robe he owned, woven with gold threads, soft as silk, fit for a king. He bowed before the Buddha and said, "Please accept this robe as a gift of honor." The Buddha looked kindly at the offering and then back at the man, and he said, "This robe is indeed beautiful, but I cannot accept it, not for myself, for I already have a robe, and it serves me well." The merchant was confused. "Why not? Surely you deserve to wear the finest." But the Buddha only smiled. "If you wish to give truly, find someone who has no robe, someone cold, someone in need. Let your gift bring warmth where it is most needed." The merchant paused and understood. He left and found a poor man shivering near the edge of the village. With reverence, he wrapped the fine robe around his shoulders, and in that moment the man's eyes filled with tears, not from the value of the cloth, but from the rare feeling of being seen. The next day, the merchant returned to the Buddha. "I did as you said," he whispered, "and I felt something I've never felt before." The Buddha nodded gently. "You have just discovered true generosity." The Buddha taught, generosity brings happiness at every stage, in the intention, in the action, and in the remembering. This kind of giving does not leave us with less. It leaves us with more openness, more connection, more joy. But in today's world, we often give for recognition. We give because we feel obligated. We give to impress or to earn something in return. But true generosity arises from clarity, not from excess, but from compassion, from looking around and asking not, "What can I offer to prove my worth?" but "Where is there suffering, and how might I ease it?" So ask yourself gently, what do I have that someone else might need more than I? It doesn't have to be gold or silk. Sometimes the most generous act is presence. Sometimes it's listening without judgment. Sometimes it's your time, your patience, your undivided attention. Sometimes it's the kind word you withhold, the forgiveness you offer silently, the space you make for someone else to breathe. When we give in this way, we let go of ego and touch something deeper. A quiet joy, a secret warmth, not because we are good, but because we are human, and humans are meant to care for one another. Zen reminds us the value of a gift is not measured by its cost, but by its relevance, by its heart. To give someone what they truly need when they need it is a form of wisdom. And wisdom is the highest kindness. Tonight, take a moment to reflect. What do you have that no longer serves you, but might be a miracle for someone else? What excess could become nourishment? What weight could become light in another's arms? And can you release it, not with pride, but with peace? The Buddha did not need more. He needed less. Not because he lacked, but because he saw clearly what was enough. And when we know what is enough, we are no longer afraid to share. Generosity is not about things. It is about freedom. The freedom to say, this is no longer mine. The freedom to ask, who might this belong to now? The freedom to feel joy, not in what we gain, but in what we release. So tonight, as you rest, offer something. Perhaps just a prayer, a silent wish, a moment of gratitude sent outward. You have more to give than you know. And somewhere someone needs exactly what you hold. Let giving be your way of letting go. Let giving be your practice of presence. Let giving become your gateway to joy. And now, as your hands grow lighter from releasing and your breath flows more freely, we arrive at the edge of a river where compassion does not come from theory, but from action. And the burdens we carry are not always on our backs, but in our minds. Let us continue. Story 9. The Two Monks and the River. The river is not just water. It is time, it is movement, it is memory, and sometimes it carries more than what the eyes can see. Two monks once walked together along a muddy path, their robes damp from the morning rain. They traveled in silence, letting each step fall with mindful intention. Up ahead, a young woman stood at the edge of a wide puddle. She wore an elegant silk kimono, and the water stretched across the road in every direction. She looked down, then back at the path behind her, clearly unsure how to cross without ruining her clothing. Without a word, the elder monk walked forward. He gently lifted the woman in his arms, carried her across the puddle, and set her down safely on the other side. She bowed in gratitude and continued on her way. The two monks resumed their journey in silence. But as the hours passed, the younger monk grew restless. He shifted as they walked. He furrowed his brow. He seemed to hold something inside. At last he burst out, "Brother, we are monks. We are not supposed to touch women, especially not young and beautiful ones. Why did you carry her?" The elder monk looked at him calmly and said, "I set her down at the river's edge." "Are you still carrying her?" How often do we carry what we should have already released, not on our backs, but in our minds? A memory, a judgment, a conversation we keep replaying, a thought we cannot stop thinking. It weighs nothing, and yet it exhausts us. The Buddha taught, let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present. Cross over to the farther shore with mind released from everything. This is not an invitation to abandon life. It is an invitation to be free within it, to hold nothing that no longer belongs, to respond when needed, and then return to presence. The younger monk believed he was following the rules, but he had misunderstood their purpose. The precept was meant to protect the mind from attachment, not to suppress compassion. The elder monk saw only a human in need. He acted. He let go. The younger monk saw a violation. He held on. And long after the woman had gone, he still carried her through his judgment, his discomfort, his story. How often do we do the same? We hold on to arguments long after they end. We replay mistakes long after they're forgiven. We carry resentment long after the moment has passed. Our minds become crowded with what could have been, what should have been, what wasn't fair, what wasn't right. And each thought adds weight. Each repetition deepens the imprint. Until one day we realize we are not walking anymore. We are dragging a cart full of ghosts. But Zen asks us, what are you still carrying? And even more gently, are you ready to put it down? Presence is not about perfection. It is about releasing the need to hold, to stop rehearsing life like a script, to stop editing the past, and to begin again now. So tonight, as you lie in this quiet space, notice what thoughts still linger. What memory keeps returning? What tension have you been carrying all day or all year? Maybe someone wronged you. Maybe you wronged someone else. Maybe you're not sure which. But what if the river has already passed beneath you? What if the moment is long gone and you are still standing at its edge? Can you set it down now, gently, like the monk, with no anger, no judgment, just peace? Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means freeing. Freeing your mind to be here. Freeing your heart to feel. Freeing your breath to deepen. Because you deserve to walk this life unburdened. There is a path ahead. There is beauty still to come. But you must have both hands open to receive it. You cannot embrace what's next while holding tightly to what's gone. So take a breath. And as you exhale, imagine placing that burden down. At the edge of the river, with care, with reverence, you are not discarding it. You are releasing it back to the earth, where all things return. And if it rises again tomorrow, you can set it down again. And again. And again. This is the practice. This is the freedom. The monk didn't need to explain himself. He simply acted from love and returned to silence. And in that silence was his liberation. Tonight, may you find your own river. May you notice what you are still carrying. And may you feel the lightness that comes when you finally let it go. And now, as your steps grow lighter and your breath more still, we arrive in a quieter place. A place where silence is not absence, but presence. Where the smallest sound can teach the greatest truth. Let us continue. Story 10. The Cricket in the Temple. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. It is not the shutting out of noise, but the opening of attention. In the heart of a busy Japanese city, there stood an old temple. Its golden roof shimmered in the sun. Its stone pathways were worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. From the outside, it seemed fragile against the weight of the modern world. Cars passed, tourists wandered, vendors shouted nearby, and yet within the temple walls, silence remained. Not just quiet, but a stillness that seemed to pulse through the air, like breath, like presence. One day, a young musician visited the temple. He had heard stories about its peace, how stepping inside was like entering another world. As someone trained in music, he was fascinated not just by sound, but by the space between sounds. He entered quietly, removed his shoes, and sat near a wooden pillar. He closed his eyes and listened. At first he noticed the usual things: distant footsteps, the whisper of robes, the soft breath of wind against the paper doors. But beneath it all, he began to hear something else, a faint, rhythmic chirping, so soft it was almost not there. He opened his eyes, followed the sound, and found its source. A single cricket hidden deep in the cracks of the wood. He was amazed. How could something so small be heard in a space so large? How could this gentle sound reach through so much noise? Later, the musician approached an old monk sweeping the temple grounds. "Venerable one," he said, "did you know there's a cricket living inside the temple?" The monk smiled. "Ah, yes," he replied. "He's been with us for many years." "But how is it possible to hear him?" the musician asked. "With all the sounds outside, the traffic, the crowds, how can something so quiet be heard?" The monk placed his broom down and reached into his robe. He took out a single coin and dropped it onto the stone floor. Clink! Immediately, dozens of heads turned toward the sound. The monk looked at the musician and said softly, "People hear what they are listening for." The Buddha once taught, "The quieter you become, the more you can hear." Silence is not about escaping the world. It's about tuning into it differently. It's about listening, not just with the ears, but with the whole being. Most of us go through life tuned to certain frequencies. We hear what is urgent, what is loud, what is dangerous, what offers pleasure or pain. But we often miss the subtle, the soft, the sacred, not because it isn't there, but because we aren't listening. Think about today. What did you miss while reaching for your phone? What moment passed by unnoticed? What beauty whispered while your mind was elsewhere? Maybe it was a bird on a branch, the tone of someone's voice, a flash of kindness in someone's eyes, or the quiet truth in your own breath. We often search for signs, for clarity, for wisdom, and miss the cricket that's been chirping all along. Silence is not emptiness. It is full, It holds the quiet voice of intuition. It holds the small truth beneath the surface. It holds the softness of now. But to hear it, we must become still, not just in the body, but in the mind. Zen teaches us to return to this kind of listening, to stop chasing sound and start receiving it, to hear not only the coin, but the cricket, to listen not just to what grabs us, but to what waits patiently until we are ready. The young musician came seeking silence, but he found attention. He realized that true peace is not the removal of sound, but the deepening of awareness. That when we quiet the internal chatter, we hear what was always present. Tonight, if your mind is full of thoughts, stories, noise, don't try to force it into stillness. Instead, just listen, not to the world outside, but to the subtle world within. Can you hear the cricket? That gentle rhythm beneath your thoughts? It might be the breath, the soft pulse of your body, a truth you've been carrying without words. Let that sound guide you home. We don't need to add more. We need to subtract until only the essential remains, until we can hear life again, not through filters or expectations, but directly, raw, quiet, true. The monk did not teach with theory. He dropped a coin, and through that moment, he revealed everything. That what we listen for becomes our world, and what we ignore becomes invisible. So ask yourself gently, what have I trained myself to hear? What have I been missing? What is already here waiting for my attention? Perhaps tonight is not about finding new answers, but about hearing what has always been whispering. And maybe, like the musician, you will walk away not with silence, but with a new kind of hearing, one that listens with the heart. And now as the sounds of the world soften around you, we move into a deeper stillness still. A stillness that comes not from what is heard, but from what is known without words. The next story begins not with sound, but with the laughter of understanding. Let us continue. Story 11. Ryokan and the Moon. Sometimes, the richest people in the world own nothing at all. They walk barefoot. They sleep under roofs that leak. They eat simple meals. And yet, they carry a joy that cannot be bought. Ryokan was such a man. A Zen monk known not for his sermons, but for his presence. He lived in a small hut high in the mountains with no money, no possessions, no ambition to teach or gather followers. And yet his smile lit up the forest path. Children ran to him. Strangers sat beside him. His silence said more than words ever could. One evening, Ryokan returned to his little hut and found the door hanging open. Someone had broken in. He stepped inside and looked around. There was nothing to steal, only a worn mat, a tattered robe, and a single bowl. But even these were now gone. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he stepped back outside, looked up at the moon rising full above the trees, and whispered, "Poor fellow. I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon." That was all. No anger, no fear, no sense of violation, just compassion for the thief and wonder for the moon. The Buddha once said, "Well, let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. If we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful. Gratitude, even for nothing, even for breath, even for the moon." Ryokan understood that true wealth isn't measured by what you keep. It's revealed by what you no longer need. He knew that you can lose your bowl and still hold joy. You can be stolen from and still feel free, because no one can take what is truly yours: your breath, your peace, your attention, your awe. How often do we attach our happiness to what we have? Our clothes, our homes, our phones, our titles. And yet, these things are like clouds. Here now, gone later. The moon remains. Tonight, as you lie here with your eyes closed, imagine the thief. Imagine someone entering your life and taking something, an object, a plan, a person, a dream, and then ask yourself, what do I still have? What remains untouched? The ability to breathe, the capacity to love, the miracle of being aware, the moon, always there, always enough. Ryokan did not fight to protect what he had, because he had already let it go, not from neglect, but from understanding. He saw clearly, nothing we hold will last, so why cling? Better to enjoy and release. Better to bless the thief than to curse him. Because the true treasure was never the robe, never the bowl. It was the stillness beneath it all. Zen invites us to this kind of wealth. A richness of being, not having. Joy that arises from simply witnessing, from saying, right now this is enough. Even with less, even with nothing, especially with nothing. We spend so much time trying to secure life, to lock it down, to own, to store, to control. But what if real freedom is found not in ownership, but in release? What if our deepest peace begins when we stop trying to possess the world? And instead, we let the moon be the moon. Tonight, let yourself feel what Ryokan felt. Step outside your worries. Look up into the vast sky, see the fullness that cannot be stolen. Let go of what you thought you needed. And notice on what was always already here. What is your moon? Maybe it's the rhythm of your breath. Maybe it's the quiet of this night. Maybe it's the simple miracle of awareness. This is the treasure, freely given, always available, unbreakable, untakeable, let your heart say tonight, I wish I could give them the moon. Not from sarcasm, but from love. Because once you realize that the moon cannot be owned, you also realize it cannot be lost. And once you stop trying to keep joy, you find it everywhere. Ryokan's hut was empty, but his spirit was full. His room was cold, but his heart was warm. Because his joy came not from what he owned, but from how deeply he noticed. And that is a joy no thief can reach. The world may take your bowl, but it cannot touch your gratitude. It may scatter your plans, but it cannot dim your light. The moon is still shining, even now, even here. And now, with the glow of moonlight still lingering behind your eyes, we move gently forward toward a quiet field, a single target, and a deeper truth. That mastery is not found in control, but in complete surrender. Let us continue. Story 12, The Master Archer, Precision, Discipline, Grace. These are words we often associate with mastery. But what if mastery is not just about skill, but about surrender? What if the target isn't something outside us, but the quiet inside? In ancient times, there lived a master archer, renowned across the land for his flawless aim. His arrows never missed. His posture was perfect. His breath calm as still water. Many tried to learn his secret. Few succeeded. One day, a young archer, ambitious and eager, approached the master with a bow in hand. "Please," he said, "I have trained for years, but I want to reach the highest level. Teach me what makes your aim so perfect." The master nodded. "Meet me at dawn, on the cliff's edge." The next morning, the student climbed the mountain in the soft blue light before sunrise. There, at the edge of a dizzying cliff, the master stood waiting. Without speaking, he stepped forward, drew his bow, and released an arrow into the vast open air, his body still, his breath unbroken. Then he turned to the student and gestured, "Now, your turn." The young archer stepped forward, bow in hand. But as he neared the edge, he froze. The cliff dropped hundreds of feet below. The ground beneath him felt unsteady. His hands began to tremble. His chest tightened. He tried to draw the bow, but couldn't. His fear had stolen his breath. His aim was lost before it began. "I can't," he admitted. "I'm afraid I'll fall." The master placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "That is the lesson. Your technique is strong, but your mind is divided. Part of you aims the arrow, but the rest worries about falling, about failing, about being seen. You are not truly here." The Buddha taught, "Your work is to discover your world, and then with all your heart, give yourself to it. That is mastery." not in perfection, but in complete presence. When the archer shot from the cliff's edge, there was no separation, no fear, no second guessing, no ego calculating the result, just breath, bow, arrow, sky, a unity so complete the arrow could only find its mark. How often do we live with divided minds? We speak, but part of us is rehearsing. We act, but part of us is judging. We create, but part of us is comparing, half present, half distracted. We fear being wrong. We crave being right. We hesitate at the edge, and so the arrow wobbles, not from lack of skill, but from lack of stillness. Zen teaches the way of mushin, no mind, not emptiness, but fullness, not blankness, but presence. A state where action flows freely, without self-conscious thought. You've felt it before, haven't you? That moment when you were so fully engaged, you forgot yourself completely. Time dissolved, effort disappeared. You became what you were doing. That is the cliff's edge. That is the way of the master. Mastery is not rigid control. It's total immersion. It's letting go of results and giving yourself completely to the moment. The arrow doesn't hit the mark because you force it. It finds the target because you're no longer trying to control it. So tonight, ask yourself, where am I divided? Where am I half in, half out? What am I afraid to give my whole self to? What cliff, Dashong, have I been standing at the edge of? And what might happen if I let go? The master archer didn't teach with techniques. He taught with presence. He didn't correct the student's form. He showed him his fear. Because fear was the real obstacle, not the wind, not the bow, not the cliff. Zen does not train us to shoot arrows. It trains us to return to this breath, this action, this step, to give our full self to Sun, to this moment, you, because this moment is the only target, and your presence is the only aim. So breathe deeply now. Feel the bow in your hands, whatever that means for you tonight. A task, choice, relationship. Feel how you tense when you overthink. Feel how you shake when you fear missing. Then let it go. Let your breath steady. Let your grip soften. And release without expectation. Not for perfection, but for truth. The Buddha said, just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, the wise are not moved by praise or blame. This is the stillness we practice, not in the absence of challenge, but in the presence of full attention. And if you miss, you try again, not harder, but quieter. You return, you realign, and eventually you become the arrow. With that wisdom in our hearts, we step quietly forward into a new teaching. One not about the obstacles we overcome, but the ones we learn to walk around. Let us follow the path where it leads. Story 13. The Heavy Stone. Not all obstacles are meant to be removed. Some are meant to be walked around. In a quiet village, nestled among the green folds of the mountains, there was once a road. It was the only path connecting the village to the world beyond. One day, after a heavy rain, a massive stone broke loose from the cliffs and fell, landing squarely in the middle of the road. It blocked the way entirely. The villagers gathered, concerned and frustrated. They pushed. They pulled. They tried ropes, levers, even hammers. But nothing worked. The stone was too heavy, too embedded, too stubborn. So they called for a Zen master living nearby, a man known not for his strength, but for his quiet wisdom. When he arrived, he didn't touch the stone. He didn't give commands. He didn't suggest tools, shati. He simply walked around it slowly, examining the surrounding land. Then he looked back at the villagers and asked, "Why must the stone be moved?" They looked at each other, confused. "Because it blocks the road." The master smiled gently. "Perhaps the road is not the only path." And with that, he led them a few steps to the side, where the land dipped, where grass gave way to firm earth. "Here," he said, "we make a new road." The Buddha once taught, "As the fletcher straightens the arrow, so the wise shape their minds." Sometimes the wisest thing we can do is not to move the stone, but to move our thinking. We often face obstacles in life that feel immovable: loss, illness, change, delay. And our first instinct is to push harder, to fix it, to make it go away. We exhaust ourselves trying to return things to how they were. But what if the obstacle is not blocking the path? What if it is the path? Think of a time when something didn't go as planned. A door closed, a relationship ended, a job disappeared, a dream shifted. And then later, maybe years later, you looked back and realized it had to happen. It opened something. It shaped you. It led you here. Not all heavy stones are burdens. Some are invitations to change direction, to adapt, to grow in a way you never would have chosen. This is not giving up. This is evolving. The villagers believed that to move forward, the road had to stay the same. But the Zen master saw clearly. The road is not fixed. The stone is not the enemy. It is simply a reminder to look wider. How often do we get stuck, not because of the challenge itself, but because of our insistence that life follow our plan, that people behave the way we expect, that timing unfold the way we desire, that success arrive through the path we imagined. When it doesn't, we feel defeated. but perhaps we are only being redirected. Zen teaches us to cultivate flexibility, not rigidity, to bend like bamboo, to yield like water, to say, this was not what I wanted, but maybe it is what I needed. Tonight, bring to mind your own heavy stone, something you've been trying to move, trying to fix, trying to force. And now, ask yourself, what if I walked around it? What if the solution isn't resistance, but redirection? What if peace doesn't lie in moving the world, but in moving with it? You may find that there's a new path just beside the old one you hadn't seen, one you hadn't even considered. But now it calls you, not because the stone has gone, but because your vision has changed. The villagers eventually came to love that stone. It became a landmark. Children played beside it. Elders rested in its shade. It was no longer an obstacle. It was part of their story. What we resist can become what roots us if we are willing to see it differently.
The Buddha said, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. And sometimes, beginning again means beginning beside the stone. So tonight, if something feels too heavy to change, too embedded, too stubborn, step back, breathe, look wider. You don't need to win against it. You only need to see differently. Peace is not in conquering. It is in shifting gently like a stream around a boulder. Beyond this stillness, something new is waiting. Let us walk softly in that direction.
Story 14. The empty cup. The heaviest stone we carry is often the belief that we already know. Even when we walk around the obstacles in our path, we may still carry fixed ideas in the mind about how things should be, about who we are, about what the truth must look like. But wisdom isn't found in what we cling to. It begins in what we're willing to let go. A scholar once came to visit a Zen master he had studied for decades. His shelves were full, his words were precise, his theories elaborate, and yet something was missing. He wanted to understand Zen. The master invited him in and served tea. As the scholar spoke, sharing his knowledge of sutras, psychology, doctrine, the master began to pour. The cup filled and kept filling. Tea spilled over the sides, onto the table, onto the scholar's robes. "Stop!" the man exclaimed. "Can't you see the cup is full?" The master smiled. "Exactly," he said. "You are like this cup, full of your own ideas. How can I offer you anything new if you do not first empty yourself?" The Buddha taught, those who cling to views wander the world, offending people. This isn't a condemnation.
It's an invitation to loosen the grip, to open the palm, to become curious again. We often believe we are ready for truth, but we come already full of opinions, full of assumptions, full of conclusions we don't even realize we're carrying. And so, like the overflowing cup. Truth cannot find space to settle. But Zen isn't about adding more. It's about clearing the cup, not to lose what matters, but to discover what's real beneath it all. Take a moment now. Gently ask yourself, what am I full of? Maybe it's worry, maybe pride, maybe the need to always understand. Can you let some of it spill, even a few drops? Can you say, just for tonight, I don't know, not in defeat, but in humility, in readiness? Because the true beginner's mind is not empty in fear. It is empty in wonder. It listens. It receives. It allows truth to rise, like steam from a quiet cup of tea. The Zen master didn't lecture. He simply poured. And in that act, a door opened. The scholar didn't lose his knowledge. He lost his rigidity. He softened. And so he began to learn. In life, we cling tightly to what we think we know, how someone should act, what a relationship should be, what success looks like, what healing should feel like. And in doing so, we block the deeper wisdom that wants to arrive. We must make space. We must become the empty cup. The Buddha said, to know and yet think we do not know is the highest. To not know and yet think we know is a disease. There is beauty in not knowing. It makes us gentle. It keeps us open. So tonight, lay aside your mental scripts. Let go of the need to define everything, to categorize, to analyze. Just sit, just breathe, just be a vessel, and allow wisdom to pour in. Because what we think is fixed is still unfolding. And what seems like misfortune today may one day become a blessing in disguise. With that truth steeping in silence, we turn the page and arrive at a story of a humble farmer, a man who met the tides of life, joy and sorrow alike, with only 2 words, "We'll see." Let us walk with him now. Story 15. The farmers will see. Some truths are not poured into us like tea. They are lived into us like rain softening stone. And sometimes the deepest wisdom is not spoken in sutras, but whispered in 3 simple syllables. We'll see. There was once a farmer in a quiet mountain village. He was not rich, not powerful, not loud. But when things happened, good or bad, he always answered the same way. We'll see. One day his only horse ran away. The villagers came full of concern. "Oh no, what terrible luck! How will you plow the fields?" The farmer shrugged gently. "We'll see." Days later the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses from the hills. The villagers were amazed. "You're so lucky. You've been blessed." The farmer smiled. "We'll see." Not long after, his only son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He fell and broke his leg badly. Again the villagers gathered. How awful! What misfortune! The farmer touched his son's hand and said softly, "We'll see." Soon after, the army came to the village, drafting all young men to fight in a distant war. But the farmer's son, with his broken leg, was left behind. Now the neighbors cried, "You're so fortunate. Your son is safe. The others may not return." And once more the farmer whispered, "We'll see." He didn't deny reality. He simply refused to imprison it in judgment. He made space for the story to continue. The Buddha taught everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make peace with this, and all will be well. The farmer didn't resist change. He flowed with it, like a leaf on the river, like a breath through the chest. We often rush to label our lives. This is success. This is failure. This is tragedy. This is a gift. But we forget. The story isn't finished yet. What breaks you today may free you tomorrow. What blesses you now may test you later. And what you think you've lost may return in a different form. So much of our suffering doesn't come from events, but from how tightly we cling to what we believe about them. We want things to mean something, immediately, completely, permanently. But wisdom lives in patience, in giving life room to unfold. Try this now. Think of something in your life that feels unresolved. A challenge, a change, a disappointment. And instead of judging it, say, "We'll see." Let that be your offering, your mantra, a gentle bow to the mystery. The farmer was not passive. He still fed the animals, tended the fields, cared for his son. But inwardly, he remained unhooked. He did not let fortune inflate him. He did not let pain defeat him. He simply allowed life to keep moving. We often ask, is this good or bad? But Zen asks, can you stay with it without labeling? Can you breathe with it? Feel it fully? Let it become what it's meant to become? The farmer's "will see" is not avoidance. It's a radical kind of presence, a deep trust in the rhythm of impermanence, a quiet knowing that the present moment, no matter how unclear, is still sacred. The Buddha said, as rain falls equally on the just and the unjust, so does wisdom arise for all who are open. We cannot stop the rain, but we can stop calling it a curse before the flowers bloom. So tonight, if your life feels uncertain, if things aren't going as planned, let go of the need to figure it out. Breathe, observe, be with it. Say softly, "We'll see," and trust that this story is still becoming. With that softness in our step, we turn toward the next bend in the path, where a samurai stands sword in hand, and learns that paradise and hell are only one breath apart. Let us walk on. Story 16. The Samurai and the Gates of Heaven and Hell. Some people learn wisdom from books, others from experience. But for a certain samurai, the lesson came at the tip of a sword. He was a man of stature, a warrior of many battles, honored, respected, feared. But beneath the armor, something stirred. A question. What lies beyond skill, beyond reputation, beyond the edge of the blade? He had heard whispers of a Zen master, a man who lived simply but whose presence revealed profound truths, and so the samurai sought him out. He found the master sweeping leaves outside a small temple. "I have a question," the warrior said, his voice firm. "Tell me, what is the difference between heaven and hell?" The master looked up, expressionless. Then he laughed, a sharp, piercing laugh. "You? A samurai? You look more like a beggar in fancy armor." The warrior stiffened. "You come with your pride, your ego, your dull sword, and you want to understand heaven?" The samurai's face turned red. His hand reached for his hilt. His rage flared like fire. He drew his sword and raised it high. "You insult me! I should strike you down!" The master didn't move. He looked straight into the warrior's eyes and said, "That is the gate of hell." Time froze. The sword trembled. The warrior saw clearly his anger, his pride, his ego, all of it rising like a storm. From within, he stepped back. Tears welled in his eyes. He sheathed his sword and dropped to his knees. "And that," the master said gently, "is the gate of heaven." The Buddha taught, "With our thoughts, we make the world." Heaven and hell are not places we go. They are spaces we enter through our choices. The samurai thought he came to learn philosophy, but he came to confront himself. And in doing so, he saw a deeper truth. Heaven is not granted. Hell is not imposed. They are opened and closed with every breath. How often do we swing open the gate of hell with a thought, with a reaction, with a word we regret the moment it leaves our lips? The tension builds. The ego takes over. The story spins. And we forget we are the ones holding the key. You've felt it, haven't you? That rush of defensiveness, that need to be right, that heat rising in the body when pride is touched. We think we're responding to others, but we're entering a prison of our own making. Now think of a time you softened, paused, chose humility, chose to breathe, and suddenly the storm passed. That was the gate of heaven. Zen practice teaches between stimulus and response, there is space.
In that space lies our power, and in that power, our peace. The Master didn't explain heaven and hell. He revealed them. He allowed the samurai to see them for himself, not as concepts, but as living doors within the mind. Tonight, pause and reflect. What opens your gate of hell? A tone of voice? Reminder of old wounds? A threat to your identity? And what opens your gate of heaven? A breath? A choice? A moment of awareness? Can you see it? Can you begin to step through with intention? Because we are the gatekeepers. We are not helpless. Even in anger, we can return. Even in shame, we can breathe. Even in fear, we can soften. The samurai entered the mountain thinking he was strong, but he left understanding what strength truly is, not in control, but in surrender, not in domination, but in self-awareness. The Buddha said, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. That word might be, I see, or I'm sorry, or I was wrong. Sometimes the strongest sword is silence. So tonight, if emotion arises, anger, fear, pride, remember, you are standing at a gate and you are holding the key. Where you go next is up to you. And so the sword is lowered. The gate to heaven opens not with force, but with humility. What comes next is not a test of strength, but a test of stillness. A lesson not taught through argument or confrontation, but through something far simpler, a shared cup of tea, a moment of awareness, and a mind willing to empty itself again. Let us sit beside the Master now and listen to what he pours. Story 17. The Zen Master's Tea. Not every lesson comes from words. Some come from silence, and some come from tea. A young man full of ambition came to study with a renowned Zen master. He had read many books. He had traveled far. He had practiced tirelessly. And now he believed he was ready for real enlightenment. The master welcomed him. They bowed. They sat. And then silence. The student waited for instruction. But the master simply poured tea. He filled the student's cup slowly, steadily, until it reached the rim. And then he kept pouring. Tea spilled over the edge, onto the saucer, onto the table. The student flinched. "Master," he said, "the cup is full. It can't hold any more." The master paused, then said quietly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions, assumptions, and knowledge. How can I show you Zen if you do not first empty your cup?"
The Buddha said, "It is the empty vessel that is useful." And in Zen, the beginner's mind is not a weakness, it is the path. We often think that more is better. More knowledge, more books, more understanding. But sometimes more becomes noise, more becomes ego, more becomes a wall that blocks direct experience. True learning begins with unlearning. True wisdom begins when we stop trying to prove what we know and start listening, really listening. The master could have given a lecture, but he gave tea, because Zen is not theory, it is presence. So take a breath now. Ask yourself, what am I full of? Perhaps it's beliefs you've carried for years. Perhaps it's the need to be right, to be seen, to be certain. And can you let just a little bit of that spill over? Not to lose yourself, but to find space again. When we empty our cup, we become available to truth, to intuition, to the subtle teachings that arrive in the quietest ways. Beginner's mind is soft, curious, open. It does not assume. It asks. It wonders. It bows. Not to others, but to the moment. The master's teaching was not in the tea. It was in the pause. In the moment when the student realized he had come not to add, but to dissolve. Zen is not about knowing everything. It is about meeting everything freshly, without labels, without filters, without trying to get somewhere. Tonight, as you lie in the soft silence of this moment, let your mind become the empty cup. Let your breath pour in. Let your thoughts settle. Let your awareness return to the space of unknowing. Because in that space, everything becomes possible again. The Buddha said that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So stay new, stay soft, stay empty, and you will receive what cannot be taught, only tasted. And so the cup is emptied, not as an act of loss, but as an invitation to begin again. To approach the path not as an expert, but as someone willing to truly walk. But now comes the next question. If the cup is empty and the heart is open, which way will you go? Of all the teachings, all the boats on the river, how do you choose the one that will truly carry you across? Let us listen to how that choice is made. Story 18. Choosing the right boat. Not every path is meant for you. Not every truth must be yours. Not every practice will open your heart. And that is perfectly okay. A young seeker once came to a Zen master with a troubled heart. He had studied many paths, sat with many teachers, chanted, fasted, read sacred texts from different traditions, and still he felt confused. "Master," he asked, "there are so many boats on this river,
So many teachings, so many paths. How do I know which one is right? The master looked at him and said, "That depends. Where are you trying to go?"
Silence. The seeker didn't know. He had been too busy trying to board every boat to pause and ask why he was sailing at all. The Buddha said, "Just as a boat is useful only when it crosses the river, so is a teaching only useful when it leads to liberation." Not all teachings are meant to be kept forever. They are vehicles. You use them to cross, and then you step off. In Zen, the path is not about accumulating answers. It's about becoming honest with your question.
Why do you seek? What truly calls you? What feels real in your bones? Because when you know where your heart longs to go, the right boat will feel natural. Not always easy, but right. The mistake is not in exploring. The mistake is in assuming there is one universal boat for all rivers, for all people, for all seasons of life. There isn't. Some paths are fiery, others are soft. Some need structure, others need silence. And sometimes the boat you used before no longer fits who you are now.
That's okay. The river has changed. So have you. Zen does not demand loyalty to form. It asks for sincerity of heart. What brings you back to presence? What teaches you how to let go? What opens your awareness without tightening your ego? That is your boat. And you'll know it, not by how it looks, but by how it feels. Tonight, reflect on your own path. Are you paddling a boat because someone told you to? Because it looks beautiful from the shore? Because it once worked, but now feels heavy? Can you let it go and choose again? You are allowed to change course. You are allowed to sit by the river and wait. You are allowed to follow the current for a while until you find a rhythm that feels like home. The Buddha said, "Believe nothing unless it agrees with your own reason and common sense." And your deepest sense is silence. Listen to it. It knows the way. So tonight, do not be afraid of choice. Do not fear the variety of boats. Instead, listen to your longing. Let it guide you. And trust that the right boat doesn't promise comfort. It promises awakening. As we set down the paddle, we arrive at a different kind of question, one that cannot be answered with logic, only lived. The kind of question that breaks the mind, so the heart can hear. Let us lean into the sound of one hand. Story 19. The sound of one hand. Some questions are not meant to be answered. They are meant to be lived until the questioner disappears. A student once came to a Zen master and asked, "What is the nature of enlightenment?" The master didn't reply.
Instead, he leaned forward and asked, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The student blinked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He furrowed his brow. He looked to the trees, to the sky, to the master's eyes. No answer came. Because there was no answer.
At least not in the way the mind expected. This was not a riddle. It was a koan, a paradoxical question used in Zen to break the grip of logic, to shatter the structure of thought, to invite awakening not through reason, but through direct realization. The Buddha said, "Words are but fingers pointing at the moon. Do not mistake the finger for the moon. Koans remove the finger, so you are forced to feel the moon." The sound of one hand is not a trick. It is a doorway, not to knowledge, but to presence, to the space before thinking arises, to the silence that is always here, beneath the noise of explanation. The student returned to his cushion. He meditated for days, weeks, months. At first, he tried to solve it. He imagined sounds, invented metaphors, constructed clever responses. Nothing satisfied. And slowly, he began to let go. Let go of trying. Let go of thinking. Let go of answering. And in that letting go, something shifted. The koan was no longer a question. It was a mirror. We all seek answers to life, to suffering, to love, to purpose. But sometimes the answer is not what we find, but what we become in the search. The sound of one hand cannot be heard, because it is not a sound. It is the felt presence of this moment. It is what happens when you are so still that the question falls away. Try it now. Close your eyes. Listen for the sound of one hand. And when no answer comes, feel what remains. Stillness, attention, being. That is the heart of Zen. Not meaning, not theory, just this. When the student stopped trying to impress the master, stopped seeking validation, stopped chasing enlightenment, the master bowed to him, not because he gave the right answer, but because he had become the answer. Tonight, you don't need to understand. You don't need to explain. You don't need to fix. You only need to listen, not to words, but to silence. Because in that silence, everything that truly matters is already present. The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." And sometimes, even that one word is too much. So as you drift into stillness tonight, ask nothing, answer nothing, just breathe. Let the question remain until the self dissolves into the moment. And now, with silence still ringing in our awareness, we follow a young seeker once more, this time not to a teacher, but up a sacred mountain, not to hear a truth, but to realize it was always with him. Let us climb. Story 20. The Sacred Mountain. Some truths we chase for a lifetime. only to find them resting quietly where we began. There was once a young seeker who heard stories of a sacred mountain. It was said that at its peak lived an old sage who held the answer to all questions, the key to enlightenment, the wisdom of life and death. The seeker packed what little he had and set off before dawn. He crossed rivers and climbed rocks, endured storms, fasted, prayed, meditated. He met other travelers along the way. Some turned back, some built shrines and stayed where they were. But he kept going, driven, determined, certain the truth waited at the top. After many years, he reached the summit. There, surrounded by clouds and silence, sat the sage, still and radiant. The seeker fell to his knees. "Master," he whispered, tears in his eyes, "I have searched the world for truth. Please, show me." The sage looked at him with kindness and said, "There is nothing to show. What you seek has always been within you." The seeker blinked. "But I gave up everything. I suffered, I struggled. I climbed all this way." The sage nodded. "Yes, you needed the journey, not to find truth, but to exhaust the illusions that were in the way." The Buddha said, "The way is not in the sky. The way is in the heart." The seeker looked around. The mountain was silent, the wind gentle, his breath steady, and suddenly he understood. He hadn't found something new. He had simply remembered what had always been true. Truth does not hide. It waits, not on mountaintops, not in words, but beneath the noise of seeking, beneath the stories of not enough, beneath the grasping for meaning. It is always here, in the breath, in the stillness, in the space between thoughts. We all have our mountains, the goals, the answers, the spiritual peaks we think we must reach. And often the climb teaches us more than the summit. Because in the striving, we begin to see what was driving us. And in the stillness that follows, we begin to hear what was always whispering. Zen doesn't demand you stop climbing, but it asks you to see clearly. Are you climbing to escape yourself, or to return? Tonight, reflect gently. What have you been chasing? Where have you been climbing? What answers are you waiting for? Now ask, if I stopped here and listened, what would I find? You may discover that peace is not a peak. It is a presence, not a reward for effort, but a return to being. The seeker came down from the mountain not with more knowledge, but with fewer questions. He walked slower, smiled more, because now he knew the sacred is not in the summit. It is in the step, the pause, the breath. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without."
And when you realize this, everywhere becomes sacred. Every moment, the mountain. So tonight, rest in this truth. You are already there. Not in the future, not at the top. Here, now, always. And now, as we take one last breath together in this sacred space, we gather the lanterns from each story and carry them home. It is time to return, to remember, to rest. Let us close this journey with presence. You've walked with empty boats. You've met farmers who whispered, "We'll see," and warriors who discovered heaven at the edge of a sword. You've stood at the river, sat with a teacup, and gazed up at the moon, with nothing left to lose. But what if these stories were never about them? What if they were always about you? What if the angry man was your ego? The thief, your fear of loss, the stone in the road, your resistance to change? What if the mountain was not a place to reach, but a homecoming to your own breath and the sound of one hand, a silence you've known all along? The Buddha said, as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so does the Dharma have one taste, the taste of freedom. And perhaps that is what you've touched here. Not in dramatic revelations, but in quiet recognitions. The kind that happen when the mind grows still and the heart grows soft. You don't need to remember every story. You don't need to explain them to anyone. Let them live inside you. Let them become a part of how you listen, how you speak, how you walk through your day. Let them settle like warm tea in the belly, like moonlight in an empty room, like a smile you don't need to justify. Peace is not found in some distant future or perfect version of yourself. It's here, in this breath, in this stillness, in this willingness to be with what is. So take one more breath, gently, and let it go. As you exhale, imagine the stories lighting up within you. Not like answers, but like stars, not fixed, but guiding. There is no final teaching, no last secret, only this: stay awake, stay kind, stay empty enough to be filled, and full enough to overflow. Let your presence be the path. Let your attention be the practice. Let your life be the temple. And when the noise returns, because it will, when the traffic rises, when the emails stack, when the mind spins, you now carry something deeper. A stillness beneath the motion, a knowing beneath the thought. A peace that no one gave you, because it was always yours. Thank you for walking this path with me. Thank you for listening, not just with ears, but with the whole of your being. If these stories brought you comfort, clarity, or calm, then carry them forward. Share them. Return to them. Or better yet, live them. And if you'd like more journeys like this, If you'd like to keep walking this path together, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what story touched you most. And together we'll keep exploring, one breath at a time. May you be safe. May you be still. May you be free. Good night.